Welcome to our show. Welcome to our show. It's a good show. Big shoe. It's really huge.
Hey, I'm Rick Collins, and you're listening to I'm the Devil, and I played the devil in Toxic Avenger 2 and 3. You're listening to Zack Bide's Talking Troma. Talking Troma with Zack Bides.
It's really huge. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Tromaville, and welcome to episode 20 of Talkin Troma. In this very special episode, I go toe-to-toe with Satan. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been joining me in this trip through Tromaville, and there will be plenty more. Keep your eyes peeled, as I'm thinking about starting up a Talkin Troma Patreon on there where I'll do like different shout-outs, exclusive for Patreon, like Troma trailer and Troma movie commentaries. I'm still figuring it all out, but I think that's something that people would like, and it'll, help, just help this going so I can keep buying more Troma DVDs. And even I'll have, tiers where I can promote your project or business or whatever on the show. This has been brought to you by Amortville VPN. But right now, more importantly, this episode, I needed to have very special guest for 20. It's such a milestone marker. And I'm going to play a clip of our next guest giving the last temptation to Toxie. Let's listen.
Melvin Junko, come on up! Whoa! Look out there, my boy. Let me show you your future! Ta-da!
Toxic shock!
No toxic shock. Just your imagination set free! Look out there, Melvin. More than you've ever dreamed of. A proud, shining world with a Porsche in every driveway. Chicken McNuggets in every pot. And you, you, Melvin, smack dab in the middle of it, with more than you've ever wished for. Loved by millions the world over. You'll be more popular than the Beatles and Elvis combined.
That sounds like an awful lot on minimum wage.
Who said minimum wage? Did I say minimum wage? I didn't say minimum wage. Melvy, baby! What self-respecting, hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength works for peanuts?
None, I guess.
Melvy, you're a star, Boobala. All these things I will give thee if thou will fall down and work for me. Work for me.
Where have I heard that before?
He sold weed to the Cretans, commanded terrorists on a jungle island, was the chairman of Apocalypse Incorporated, and is Satan himself. Let me introduce to you, Rick Collins.
Thank you, Zack. It's a pleasure being on. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I gotta say, I'm very excited to talk to you about your time in Tromaville.
Very exciting stuff.
I grew up. The first Toxic Avenger is the first one I saw, but Toxic Avenger 3 was the first one I owned out of all of the Troma movies. So I played that on a loop. So your performance in that one really stuck with me all these years.
Wow.
So I'm curious, were you always an actor before you got involved with Troma?
So I was a theater minor in college, some aspirations for acting, enjoyed it very much, but ultimately decided I wanted a paycheck and that was steady, some kind of gig. An actor's job is typically looking for work, as you probably know. Yeah. So I went to law school and started working as a prosecutor, and that's sort of my career path. But when I was in college, I also worked at a couple of different jobs, and I was working as a bouncer in some nightclubs. And the kid who worked the coat room one night that we were there says, we're going to New Jersey tomorrow for this movie thing. I'm like, well, what's that? He's like, well, they're looking for like bodybuilders for, in shape people for this like health club scene. I'm like, well, I'm a personal trainer, a bouncer. I'm competed in bodybuilding. Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So I went down the next day to Jersey, and the working title of the movie was Health Club Hero at that time.
Okay.
And, it was called, the production company was called Troma. I really knew nothing about it at the time. And
do you think you ever saw any of their sexy comedies before that? I
don't think so. I don't think I had. So, went there and wound up there for, I think, two days of the shoot. The first day was a scene, and then I found out that the script was basically this health club mop boy who, falls into a vat of nuclear waste and becomes this, hideously deformed super creature of, immense size and strength. And so, okay. So I was in the scene where Melvin the mop boy dives out the window, and, we're all sort of standing around as he's writhing and all of the goo. And so I spent a day on that shoot. And I know that, Marissa Tomei, I think was there that day. I've heard, but of course it was before she was ever in anything. So I had no idea who she was, but there were a number of people who were there. It was a pretty big production. And the next day, I think I went back and I think we shot a scene where I was given a line. And this was, my first time ever in a film. I had done some stage work and this and that, but I'd never been in a movie before. And they dressed me up as a biker. And I was in the scene where the main, heroine of the movie, I think her name was Claire at that time, if I recall. And she's walking with her cane down the street, and I'm with a couple of other thugs, hanging out on a motorcycle or on the street. And I'm the one who takes her cane away. And my first line in film was, "Where you going, Blondie?" And as I take the cane away from her and kind of, lift her skirt suggestively, and, we threaten her, and we're all laughing when she says, "I'll tell my boyfriend Melvin." And we're all laughing, "Melvin!" And then, of course, he appears and he's huge, and we all run away.
What's up, guys? Yeah.
That was it. So that was sort of where it all started. And it was fun. And Michael Hers and Lloyd Kaufman were kind of, both hanging around, and I got to meet some cool people and, made some nice connections. And I figured that was kind of it. I finished, schooling, and, was getting ready to, I was either in law school or getting ready for law school. And then Troma called me again. And I'm like, well, what's up? And they're like, well, we'd like you to come in and do something for this new movie what we're doing. Okay, well, what's that? Well, it's called The Class of Nuke Em High. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you want me to play? Well, we got a part for you. We want you to be this character who sells, radioactive marijuana to these high school kids and causes them to mutate. So I'm like, okay, that sounds like perfect job for me.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I think the character's name was Ron Sims. And they dressed me up in this hazmat suit. And I proceed to sell this, radioactive weed to these kids, and which, leads to the plot of this, this crazy story of these, radioactive kids. And that was fun. being in the hazmat suit was fun. Having a little few more lines was nice. And so I got to sort of, now I had these 2 Troma films under my belt. And at the time I was trying to do some other stuff. So I was doing a little bit of commercial work, and I had some extra work in some, bigger budget movies, small little parts here and there, doing a little bit of stage work while I was getting ready for my career as a lawyer, which ultimately is what I do for a living. But so that was fun. And a couple of years passed again. And now I was finished law school and I was working as an assistant district attorney. Troma calls and says, we need you back. I'm like, well, what now? So they're like, well, we're filming this movie that requires an actor with some muscle on him, and we think you're the guy. And so I went down, and we were filming up at near Bear Mountain, and in a park up there. And I remember my first day, I was so excited. Now I was a villain. I was like, a significant villain in this movie, and it was very exciting. And I remember showing up on set the first day and changing, and my costume was basically, riding pants, black boots, no shirt, crossed bandoliers, and I think that there was like a tattoo that would be penciled on every morning, and a black beret. And the idea was they had fitted me with like a pig's snout, this prosthetic pig snout, which I had no idea that was just the beginning of the prosthetic and, kind of a latex involvement that I would have with Troma. But so that was the character. It was I played this character called Colonel Jennings. And Colonel Jennings was, on this island, and we were terrorists, and our idea was to, destroy society with the AIDS virus and all these horrible, terrible things. And so it was a blast. I got to shoot guns. I got to do some of my own stunts. There was a hovercraft.
I was going to ask you about that. So that is actually you driving that hovercraft around.
So I practiced most of the morning. They were going to have a stunt man do it, and Lloyd was like, I'll the stunt man. I'm like, Lloyd, let me try this. Let me see if I can do it. So I practiced. I'm riding around in the little the hovercraft for the day, because that ultimately, spoiler alert, that is how I meet my demise in that movie, because somebody throws a live grenade in the hovercraft, and I try to get it in time, and boom, you see this, my body gets blown into pieces. But I spent the morning riding around in the hovercraft and got decent at it. And so yeah, that's me doing the stunts in that film.
I was going to ask, so I was going back, listening to the commentary, or actually reading Lloyd's book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking, I Learned from the Toxic Avenger. And he said originally in there, you had a bigger pig nose than what shows up on film. He talks about you getting into a car accident and breaking your nose.
Yeah. There was, we had some problems with the prosthetic. I did get in a car accident on the way there. I got banged up a little bit, so I was very sensitive. So they kind of downsized it a little bit, but yeah, it was a fun role. It was a blast to shoot. It was, my role was maybe a week, something like that. A lot of it, I think, was on weekends, a few consecutive weekends. It was the beginning of understanding the pressure of losing the light in a film shoot, as that's in a day shoot, when you need the light in order to be able to shoot the film, when it's half an hour or an hour before sunset, the director, everybody realizes they didn't get everything done that they wanted to. So they're going to be behind schedule. So the pressure, the anxiety level increases, and the losing the light becomes the driving factor. And I remember there was I think he may have been an assistant director named Jennings, like my character. And I think his first name was William also, as I think my character was. And I remember Lloyd screaming as the pressure came on. And if, either production assistants or others were not doing things in a timely way, Lloyd's phrase was, "It's asshole time." And I don't know if you've ever heard him.
I've been on the receiving end of asshole time.
So, yes. So that's one of his famous lines. And he would scream, "It's asshole time! It's asshole time! William! And he would be screaming. The louder, the more light was lost, the louder he would get, right? So that was a fun shoot too.
In his book, he talks about a lot of the cast and crew living in those barracks. Did you live in the barracks with them?
I didn't live on for that one. I didn't. My role wasn't big enough. I may have spent like one night in the barracks, but I wasn't there for a long period of time. I know a lot of the other actors were. For me, that was really more in the later Toxic Avenger movies. But yeah, I know that people were living. I think it was Camp Smith, if I remember, and it was barracks, and it's a casual film set. Guys, girls, everybody's kind of changing room is unisex. Everybody's pretty open. So it was a cool opportunity to meet a lot of cool people.
There's a ton of guns in that movie. How was gun safety on the set of that film?
Looking back, I probably should have been more cognizant of it. We had in all of the even in Toxic 1, there were fire stunts. There were, in Troma's War, there were guns. We had professionals that were brought in. Particularly, a lot of the actors were not Screen Actors Guild. They were, non-union actors, and that's most of the Troma movies. It gives an opportunity for people who are not professionally committed actors to be able to do things on film. And sometimes it's the way somebody looks or has a funny manner that gets them cast. But with respect to the guns and the stunts, I do remember that most of the folks involved were professional folks who knew what they were doing. Looking back after seeing the Alec Baldwin scenario and whatnot, you start to realize, how things can go wrong. It really wasn't on my mind at the time. Your adrenaline is pumping.
Yeah.
You're focused on your character. You're focused on your lines. And trying to make the best performance that you can make. And so there's a level of trust that they're going to be doing their job and doing it the right way. And luckily, knock on wood, we didn't have any problems.
On Poultrygeist, they were there was just one gun stunt in the movie, but they were very careful on set. So it's kind of nice to hear. It sounds like it stayed pretty consistent throughout the history of Troma as far as, safety for that goes.
Yeah, I think safety has to be, you can have them, we can talk about some of the scenes and actors in the Toxic sequels, but you can have people who are not professional actors, and you can fudge it around. You can't fudge safety. You need to have professionals handling weaponry or even stunts. When something can go wrong, you've got a big problem.
Yeah. You were also just talking about how there'd be different looking actors just kind of cast in parts, and legendary actor Joe Flyshaker was discovered on the set of Troma's War. Do you have any stories about him from Troma's War?
He was. So, Joe just had a, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Joe had just an incredible look that, was unique, and Lloyd loved it. And so he started out as really just a face in the crowd, and began, when Lloyd, or I guess any director of particularly a non-union shoot, who has the flexibility to really bring anybody in and give larger roles to whoever they like or want to, Joe got bigger and bigger. I remember bigger and bigger parts, and I remember, I'll never forget him just sort of like, he was able to get down on one knee, and Joe's for those who've never seen it, we should describe Joe was an enormous person. There was a lot of Joe to love. Joe was, I don't even want to guess his weight, but it was mind-boggling. And
he looked half his size there that he was on Poultry Guys, that's for sure.
Really? Okay, yeah. But he was able to move enough that he got down on one knee. You may remember the scene where he's shooting a gun down on one knee, and he's moving around and jumping. And so Lloyd liked him. He was a character. I remember one night, I think it was when the film opened, and we all went to some sort of rap party, and after a rap party we went to like an opening party for the movie, and Joe drove us around. And I remember he had this huge boat of a car, and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and Joe was driving around, and we had some of the other actors in the back. I don't remember who they all were. I believe Paul Borghese was also in Troma's War. And Paul then went on to do the Toxic Avenger sequels. He was that sort of Robert De Niro-esque Lou Cypher from Angel Heart, character where he eats the eggs. He eats the eggs like a maniac. But yeah, so Joe was a good guy, and he went on to become a Troma favorite, in many ways, and to have a lot of people who were fans and enjoyed his acting. I don't think he had any acting training. He just loved doing it.
Yeah. I also heard that Troma's War originally was 3 hours long. Do you remember any special effects or just crazy stuff you shot that did not end up in the movie?
So I was probably, I was maybe like a secondary villain in a way, because there were a number of us sort of working in tandem to facilitate this terrible plot of infecting the world.
Yeah.
And that actually, when you think about it, that was a less evil character than I went on to play. That was the good guy, role of mine. But so I didn't get to spend as much time on the set, so I didn't see all those hours of footage, that some of the other actors may have. But I think Lloyd was notorious for filming more than he needed, and that then can sometimes become two movies at one shoot, as I guess we'll talk about.
Yeah. Well, real quick on the Troma's War front, what was your reaction the first time you read about the AIDS Brigade in the script?
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting into a Troma film that it's going to be edgy, that it's going to be provocative, it's going to be controversial. That's the nature of it. You look back even at the original Toxic Avenger movie. It was it was just pushing the envelope of violence and gore and, sex and, and mixing it with comedy and some science fiction and whatnot. So I knew even just from the role that I played in Class of Nuke Em High, where I'm selling radioactive marijuana to kids, this is not going to be your grandmother's film series.
Yeah.
Aunt Edna probably is not going to be a huge fan, but for people who like this sort of rule breaking kind of comedy that's pushing the envelope and turning conventions on its head, that's the AIDS Brigade. I mean, that's pure, that's classic Lloyd Kaufman.
Yes. Awesome. And you said you went to the premiere. Did you go see other screenings of Troma's War just around? Like, I know it had a theatrical run.
It did. It had a theatrical run. We're talking a long time ago, Zach, and I do remember going to at least one premiere, if not more. And it was nice because people had seen the movie, recognized me, and enjoyed what I did in it. And I tried to be campy and funny, and there was even a little bit of ad-libbing, and that opportunities presented themselves to kind of try some different things, which I did, and which ultimately I did a lot more of in the future movies.
So let's jump into probably the biggest of the roles of yours in all of Tromaville. The chairman of the board, Satan, in the Toxic Avenger, I guess,
yes,
part
spoiler
2.
Alert there, yeah. So, well, at the time that, I had finished Troma's War. I think that might have been in maybe 1987. We're talking about, maybe 86 that was shot and came out in 87. And I think it was in the summer of 88 or in the spring of 88 that I got a call from my friends at Troma saying we need you back. And I was like, well, okay, well, we're doing a sequel to the Toxic Avenger, and we'd like you to read for a few parts. And originally, I think that the idea was for me to play the Toxic Avenger. And so I went and I actually had a screen test with Phoebe Legere, with some of the scenes where I was playing Melvin and she was, playing the leading lady. And, she's, I'm 5'10" and a half, not short, but not tall enough.
Yeah.
So, I think I just didn't have the height to really make it work. And I'm glad in a way that it worked out that way, because obviously the part that I played was not a full mask role. And so I got to do much more acting and have my face in the movie. So I didn't get the part of the Toxic Avenger. But Lloyd, for whatever reason, just liked my shtick. He liked the way I did things. And so he's like, well, would you consider playing the villain? And it's a corporate, and Lloyd knew that I was working as a lawyer, as an assistant district attorney at the time. And so I had, I could clean up okay and dress up in a suit and look comfortable in a suit. Very different than Troma's War.
Yeah.
Where I was wearing basically nothing. But so I said, yeah, I would think about it. He goes, okay. Because the original conception for that character was more of like a Joe Flyshaker. that character, the chairman, as originally conceived in the original script, was this just, morbidly obese, somewhat similar, a large person, if you remember the mayor in the original Toxic One,
like a
was
fat
large,
cat.
Yeah, like a fat cat. That was sort of the idea. A fat cat, corporate fat cat, and showing kind of like the gluttony and that kind of aspect to it. And I think it was going to go that way until Lloyd decided that he liked what I bring to the role, or could bring to a role, and so rewrote the character for me to play the character, and rewrote it into this more, kind of like overly confident corporate, but dressed up nice, but slightly seedy. Something's not quite right about the guy. Playing much older. I mean, the concept, I think I was probably late 20s at the time. So, we grayed my beard a little bit, and we did some, makeup and whatnot to age me, because I wanted to look more like 40, but Lloyd was willing to do all of that for me to play this sort of corporate villain, which, as you point out, ultimately turns out to be the devil incarnate, right? And so I'm Satan, I'm Lucifer, I'm the Dark Prince, and so my villainy is, is deep. I was a good guy when I was playing the terrorist and the nuclear, radioactive weed dealing. Now I'm really the ultimate bad guy, the ultimate villain.
Yeah,
and I couldn't say no to that role. I mean, it's how do you, villains are the best characters to play by far. And because you play the villain as a hero, you play the villain, as a fully justified, rationalized character that's really doing the right thing. And so my conception of the chairman and the devil, of course, was, I'm the good guy. It's all these stick in the muds that are trying to ruin everything, and there's so much fun to be had. We can just do these wild fun things, and that's the best of life. And so that's what makes, to me, the role fun to play.
Yeah.
And so Lloyd offered me the role, and then I had to go to my office and ask for the time off, because I'm a full-time lawyer. So I remember sitting down with my boss at the time and saying, I have this crazy opportunity to play the lead villain in a movie, and I really don't want to turn it down. And he was like, well, what do you need in terms of time off? So I'm like, well, I need 6 to 8. He's like, well, 6 to 8 days, we'll put you down and it'll work. I'm like, no, it's 6 to 8 weeks. He's like, 6 to 8 weeks. How are we going to, you're in a part, you're assigned to a judge. How are we going to work around that? And if I said, I came up with some ideas of how to do it. He's like, well, listen, if we can't offer you the job back. We may not be able to make you any guarantees. Are you willing to accept that we can make no promises to you? What would happen if we can't take you back? And I said, well, then it was a pleasure to work here. And he was like, all right. It's but it wasn't a bluff. I wanted to do it. I figured these life throws things at you, opportunities, and how do you turn that down? It didn't feel right to turn it down. I had to do it one way or another. And so off I went for 6 weeks or more, filming what ultimately became Toxic 2 and 3, but at the time we thought we were just filming one movie.
Was there any talk on set that it might get split into a couple different movies, or was it always just going to be, this is going to be one movie?
It may be that Lloyd had that in the back of his mind. But there was nothing that I remember ever discussed about that. I mean, we were doing a lot of filming, a lot of film was going in the can, but that's true on all the Troma movies. And so we just thought it would be ultimately edited down. But I don't know if that was maybe at least a possibility in Lloyd's mind.
Do you remember anything from those movies that got cut out? Because I remember not too long ago, I saw one of the special effects guys from Toxic 2 posting a prop of like a baby that he blew up in the Toxic Avenger 2, which that doesn't appear in the movie at all. So I'm wondering like what other stuff like that may have been cut out.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot that was cut out, and then, there was that sort of segue into Japan that unfortunately would have been great if I could have gone, but I wasn't invited. But I think there was a lot that was filmed there that also didn't make it in. So yeah, there was definitely a lot. I don't remember anything specific. I do remember that I had an idea for the end of the movie, depending on whether it was going to be 1 or 2. I wasn't sure at this point how we were going to do it, but I wanted to do this scene where the chairman was leaving town with Malfair, who was my henchwoman, played by Lisa Gay in the movie. And I'm sort of walking and trying to hitch a ride out of Tromaville, and the cars won't pick me up, and I take off my shoe and I throw it, and this dejected chairman who's ultimately humiliated and the loser in the battle. I thought it would be a funny sketch, kind of a funny way of doing it. And I told Lloyd about it, and Lloyd, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, okay, yeah, you want to do it? Yeah, sure. Yeah, good. I like it. Yeah, good. The way Lloyd would sound. And so one day, the first unit of the production was off filming something, and the second unit was really doing nothing. And I figured this would be a good day to do it. So I remember sort of commandeering the second unit and filming this, and setting up the camera, where it was probably the only scene I've ever directed in a film. And so we shot this, and then I remember that night, as every night, we would sit and watch the dailies, whatever was filmed that day. After dinner, all the actors and the crew would sit and watch in the screening of the various things, scenes that were shot that day. And I remember it coming up and Lloyd saying, "What's it? What's this? What's this?" Because he obviously wasn't there and didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
Because I sort of did it, on my own, so to speak. I went rogue on that one. Yeah. And I'm like, "Lloyd, don't you remember you said that this was like a scene that you wanted me to shoot? You thought it was good." "Oh yeah. Well, it's good. I like it. It's in." And of course it is in, and it ends, Toxic Avenger 2. But that was a just a great experience. It was basically mostly a location film shoot that was in upstate New York, primarily Croton-on-Hudson area. And I remember going up there, and we would shoot pretty much all week, and then I would come home to Long Island, New York for the weekends, and then I would go back up to Croton-on-Hudson and film all week. And we did a few scenes were filmed in other areas. One of the great scenes was staged in the Surrogate Court in Manhattan, which was it's one of the most spectacular, locations you can shoot on.
Is that the interior of the Apocalypse Inc. headquarters?
Yeah, it is. It is. And we filmed at night because the court would be in session in the day, and at night we would commandeer the courthouse. And so you've got those arches, you've got that platform where the backdrop of Apocalypse Incorporated, which was the company that my evil chairman ran, and it was just a spectacular. The boardroom table there with all of my henchmen. That's the scene where Malfair has her monologue walking around the table, and Paul Borghese was at that table, and Benny Nieves and Michael Jai White, who obviously went on to play Spawn, and Mike Tyson, and so many big movies that he's done.
Black Dynamite.
Black Dynamite is a great movie.
Yeah.
I recommend it to everybody. It's just a sort of incredible modern send-up of blaxploitation films from the 70s, and Michael is incredible in it. I mean, he's a great martial artist. He's also a great actor. This was Toxic 2 and 3 was really his first movie, and so he had no real lines. He was just one of my henchmen, but a great guy, and we've stayed friends all these years. But that was a great place to film those scenes. Most of the scenes were upstate though, and up in Croton-on-Hudson, and I loved playing the part. It's a great thing to be able to get up in the morning, and your job is basically to be as silly and funny and scary as you can be, and to come up with new ways of expressing that in ways that you haven't before, and to show them something new all the time, and to say your lines in ways that are unexpected, and to throw in ad libs. And Lloyd was fantastic, because Lloyd, having now done these other Troma movies, and Lloyd feeling comfortable enough with me, and he let me kind of ad lib a lot of what we were doing. I remember, there's a scene where the Toxic Avenger is, I'm on fire. I've set myself on fire. That was a stunt man, in a fire stunt. And the Toxic Avenger puts out the fire with his, phallic hose, right?
Yeah.
So he pees, the fire out. And I don't think there was a line that I was supposed to say, but I basically wiped my face, said, "Now I'm pissed," and so I just kind of, started having fun with it. As you probably know, the premise of the two movies together is that the corporate chairman, ultimately reveals himself to be the devil by tearing open his own chest, and this green horned winged demon reveals itself to be the actual thing, and I then play that winged scary demon, and as the devil. It's funny, I remember when we were first sort of, before production even started, we're doing pre-production. I think I was at Troma headquarters, which was over in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan at the time. And I remember we were discussing that the devil costume, this costume that I'd wear, would be made out of latex from a full body cast, an upper body, face, head, arms, so the question was what color latex. And I remember that there was some talk that there was an abundance of white latex, and that, originally I think Lloyd was thinking red, like the Red Devil. And then when he was told that there was a lot of white, he was like, well, maybe the devil should be white. Yeah, it's ironic. It's ironic. Make the devil white. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna. That's gonna look ridiculous. I'm not gonna wear a white, this white costume. So we settled on green, and so the devil is green, the wings, the headpiece, and so that entire piece was form fitted, the whole costume. So I remember sitting there, and they actually take your head in, and they encase it. You have 2 straws in your nose to allow you to breathe. You can't move your head or do anything until it hardens, and then when that's taken off, the inside becomes where they pour the mold. And so that I did that with my chest, I did that with my arms, and so ultimately the costume, this was before CGI or any kind of, effects like that. The costume was something I would have to get into. When I wasn't playing the chairman in my suit, I was playing the devil. It would be a full, 2 hours to get into costume, to get those arms on, to get the chest and back piece on. And it was all form fitted to me. And the headpiece was actually glued to my face, so that when I enunciated enough and I made my expression strong enough, the mask would move with it, and the mask would actually show facial expressions. It would, the technology at the time obviously was not what it would be now, but it worked, and there was a beard aspect to it also, and a mustache. And I remember that, there were days where this was a summer shoot, and there were days where it was 80 to 90 degrees, and I'm sitting outside in the shade, if I could, just sweating inside this, latex costume. And to eat, they would hold up the mustache and feed me, because otherwise all the hair would be in my mouth, and I had fangs too. And so I'd have to take out the fangs, and, it was a big production, and getting it off, of course, at the end of the day was, elaborate as well. But it was a blast. There were 2 actors who played Toxie, John Altamura and Ron Fazio. And Ron Fazio started out as sort of the stunt Toxie, and John was the main Toxie. And then some personality issues and whatnot on the set. And ultimately they were kind of 2 Toxies, and then ultimately there was 1 Toxie, and it was Ron Fazio.
I did see a photo of you in the shade, like just trying to get away, and it definitely looked miserable in that costume.
It was rough. It was rough. It was, the things we do for our art, but it was great. I was able to just throw in, things that would make the devil would say, if he wasn't really such a bad guy, and or didn't realize he was a bad guy, and just sort of, wanted to have fun. There was a point, there's a scene where I'm leading all these little kids onto the school bus before I drive it off a cliff, and as I'm leading them in, I'm so excited to get these little kids into the bus, knowing the terrible thing I'm going to do to them. And for whatever reason, as I scoop this one little boy, had to be probably like 6 years old, as I'm bringing him in, I stop for a minute and go, "Oh, a young boy," and I kind of like scoop him on the butt and put him into the thing, with whatever savage implications would come from that. It was just, and that's in the movie. All of these things were just kind of, stuff that I was able to kind of just throw in and have fun with.
There's a shot in the movie where Satan is spitting out like maggots or whatever. That wasn't you though, was it?
That was Perry Lunas. So he did some stunts as the devil, a few here and there. I did a number of them myself. I remember there's a fight scene between Ron and me, and sort of offset, just to let you know. It was a very family, we all kind of become family on a shoot, as you know.
Yeah.
And so it started out where I was, in the very beginning, I was sharing a room in this motel that was up in Croton-on-Hudson area on location with John Altamura. And John and I were roommates. And you're spending the whole day together. You're talking at night. You're sharing, your lives together. And then ultimately, when John left, then Ron became my roommate. So I've roomed with both Toxic Avengers. and a lot of the extras had other rooms. As the shoot wore on, I guess money got tighter. Things are starting to go longer than they were anticipated. And so some of the actors, some of the extras and small parts were no longer being comped for rooms. And so our room, Ron and me, I remember we just sort of got, guys, come on in. And there was, at least one night where Michael Jai White was sleeping on the radiator under the window. A few other guys were on the floor. Ron and I are in one bed. Somebody else is in another bed. Jerry Yates, who played the little bald henchman who didn't have any lines, but he had a dragon tattoo on his head, and he always followed me around as the chairman. He was sleeping across the bottom of the bed. It was almost like a college frat house. It ultimately became, and I was only in my late 20s, so it was sort of like a second college frat. I was in a fraternity in college, and this is sort of a revision. This is revisiting that experience, and it was a lot of fun. And some of those friendships, last to this day.
And it's pretty awesome. You shared with me some photos from set that you said that only you and me had ever seen.
Yeah, so I think there was a day or two that I had a camera on the set, or maybe I gave it to somebody, and we took some pictures, and you can see the scope of the production. You can see the crane, you can see all the the crew, the extent of it, and so yeah, I don't think anybody's really seen those pictures other than you and me, and or if they can be shared as part of this, it would be cool for anybody who's a fan of the movie the movies to see it. One of we mentioned Jerry Yates. His character was Mongo. I remember and one afternoon, I was always trying to think of just nasty stuff that I could do as the chairman that would just show my just narcissistic contempt for everyone and everything around me. And so I was doing this. I had a few lines that I was supposed to deliver with no real bit of business attached to it. And what I wanted to do was add to this little bit of business where, as I'm doing the lines, I take a match, and I have a cigar as the chairman a lot in the movie, that I just light a match off Jerry's head, spontaneously. It just, to me, it just sort of showed the just doesn't care about anyone or anything. It just, I'm going to use his head to light my match, which I thought was a nice bit. So getting back to when we talk about losing the light. So this scene wasn't going to be shot until the end of the day. So now the sun is starting to go down. The scene comes up. Lloyd says, "Are you ready?" And now I'm like, all right, I really want to do this. And I had taped a flint to the off-camera side of Jerry's head. And I had practiced a few times, and I knew that it would light. I could light it, right off his head, and no one would see that there was a flint there. So I'm like, Lloyd, I'd like to do this little bit of business, where I'm lighting a match off Jerry's head while I'm doing the line. I could see right away Lloyd was like, we're losing the light. We're losing the light. I'm like, I know we're losing the light, but I think it would be really good for the character. I think it would be funny. So I could see he didn't want to do it. I said, Lloyd, give me one take. If it doesn't work in one take, I'll do the line straight, no fuss, and we'll be fine. He said, okay. And so cameras roll and action, and I take out the match, and without even looking, I light it off Jerry's head. And because we were losing the light, the way the sun was setting, it looks like Jerry's head catches fire. It's like this flame comes out of the side of Jerry's head as I light the cigar. Couldn't have gone better. And so that was in the movie.
That's awesome. Did you do a lot of the premieres with Troma on that one?
I did. I remember we were interviewed by, I think at the time it was MTV. Back when MTV, did music, but they did have shows, and they did do an interview, and I was there. I went to the premiere. Lisa Gay, Ron, many of the others. It was a lot of fun. I wound up doing, and I don't know if you'll remember, there was a show many years ago, talk show. New York, New Jersey talk show called the Joe Franklin Show.
Yes.
And basically, if you were an actor or somebody, of some notoriety in the arts, usually film, TV, if you were either on your way up or on your way down, you were doing the Joe Franklin Show. And so, this was my up. And so I wound up doing the Joe Franklin Show as a guest in, 89 when the movie came out. And I was on the set with Captain Lou Albano, who was a well-known professional wrestler who was in a Cyndi Lauper video many years ago. And, he used to have a rubber band in his goatee that he would keep together that way. And Tiny Tim. And Tiny Tim, talking about straight bedfellows, me, Lou, and Tiny Tim, who was this, falsetto voiced, eccentric ukulele player who got married on the Johnny Carson show in 1969, as I remember. So, Tiny was probably on his way out, and you're either on your way up or on your way down. And I remember on the show, he kept calling me, Mr. Collins, and I didn't know his last name, so I was calling him Mr. Tim. And and we actually took commercial breaks. And I remember Captain Lou Albano wanted to, because he knew I was in shape, and he wanted to show me some of his patented wrestling moves. And the two of us were actually rolling around the studio floor in Joe Franklin's studio while we're in the breaks between the commercial breaks between the segments. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I remember Variety gave a review of the movie where it was very complimentary to me, and it was a blast. It was a blast doing it. I remember other just memories from the On Location. There was a restaurant called Sorrento's at the time up in Croton-on-Hudson, and I remember because I was playing the devil, they wouldn't take my money for drinks. They felt it was bad luck. So, Ron Fazio and I were drinking for free and probably drinking too much. And I remember the next day we had our fight scene where, I have to jump up and do a flying kick and all this other stuff. And I remember, Lloyd probably still doesn't know, but we were either hungover or possibly even still a little bit inebriated when we were doing those scenes the next morning. That morning came much too quickly. And one of my other, I wouldn't say it's a favorite memory. It's a disturbing memory, but it's a memory. I'll never forget. I was standing near that bus of school children, and they had brought in all these extras, little kids and their moms, to be on the bus and to, that I was going to do this terrible thing to. And I remember standing there and makeup was working on me. I'm outside, I'm standing, I've got, my wings are folded behind me. I've got, the green costume, long black fingernails, fangs in my mouth, these horned, mask headpiece, terrifying appearance. And I look over out of the corner of my eye and I see these three little girls. One was maybe 9, one was maybe 6, and one was maybe 4. And they're whispering at, as they're, looking over at the big monster. And finally, the biggest one, the oldest one, gets up the courage and comes over and walks up to me. And I say, "Hi, how are you?" I'm just a man in a costume. See, it's not real. It's, okay. So she goes back. The middle one comes. "Hi, how are you?" I'm nice to her, all of this. Finally, the little one gets up the courage and she comes walking up to me and she's standing in front of me. And I'm, again, I'm thinking I'm the devil, right? I'm playing the most evil character. I'm trying to be in the character. I've been living, breathing, eating this character. And so when she walks up to me, I don't know what comes over me, but I just go, and I spread out. The wings come out to their full 6 feet on each side. The fangs come out. I'm like I've heard it said, I never actually saw it until that moment. When you say somebody's hair stands on end, this girl's hair actually stood up. She just babbled incoherently, turned and started to run. As soon as I did it, I felt horrible. And so I then go, no. So I begin chasing her to try to calm her down. And so I'm running and she's looking over her shoulder and this green demon is chasing her. So finally I go, okay, this is a terrible thing. This is I'm gonna be paying for this in many afterlives. So then later when I'm walking by the bus, she's on the bus with her mom, and every time I pass, she's screaming and pointing, and the mother is like, what are you? He's just a man in a costume. And she's like, so I think now, even all these years later, that poor kid must be on a psychiatrist's couch just saying, he was so nice to the other kids. Why me? What
You sent that psychiatrist kids to college with that one.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about working with Lisa Gay?
Yeah, so Lisa was very focused. I know she went on to play a character in a sequel, Class of Nuke Em High sequel, and did a lot of stuff with Troma. Lisa loved what she was doing. She was very focused. I remember, running lines with her. I think we were in her apartment in Manhattan at one point, and just she was committed to making that character as the best she could. It was great. It's always better if you don't have a mask,
Yeah.
And obviously I'm glad that I had so much in the movie without a mask, but also the devil was a cool character and I loved playing that because I could just be so crazy. I talked to Ron Fazio the other day, and Ron loved doing Toxic Avenger, playing Toxic Avenger. But there are a few scenes where Ron is in the movie. Ron is one of my henchmen in the boardroom scene. Playing a different character, just playing one of my henchmen, obviously, and not Toxie, and no one would ever know. But he did have a few little cameos as other characters in it. And he's done some Comic-Con. I remember I did Comic-Con just a couple of years ago, the New York Comic-Con, at the Troma booth, and it was a lot of fun. And these kids would come up to me who liked the movie and appreciate it. And I remember this one kid comes up to me and it's like, I really, really love your work. And of course, the work was done probably 25 years before he was born, and you realize film really is forever.
At my wedding, I even showed a clip from Toxic Avenger 3. I got married in a movie theater, so I had to show Toxie's wedding from part 3.
Did you really?
Yeah. so yeah, it's definitely a very important film to me.
Thank you. And to have a little piece of film, I went on to ultimately get a Screen Actors Guild card. I had a tiny little walk-on in The Sopranos. I played a cop in the 7th episode of The Sopranos first season. And I remember getting a call for that. And, there's this HBO thing. It's a new show. I'm like, really? What's it called? Oh, it's called The Sopranos. I'm like, oh, it's like an opera, an opera show. And the agent was like, oh no, it's a mafia show. I'm like, call The Sopranos? It's never going to go anywhere. I mean, come on. And of course, once I did it, I became one of the biggest fans of the show. And, almost every New York actor got some little piece of within those seasons.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad I was able to, to have that little piece of it.
Well, and then after the Toxic Avenger, you show up in Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD.
Yeah. Yep. So, and so I think Lloyd just loved to, liked me on set, liked me to come around. I didn't have much time at that time. I think I was already had left the DA's office, and I'm a lawyer in private practice. And so if you need a lawyer, there are certain areas I handle, and I'm available for hire as an attorney. I'm in a firm with other lawyers, and it's it's a serious day job, But so I couldn't do too much, but I said, all right, just find something that is completely out of character for me to do. I've played the tough guy terrorists. I've played the corporate villains. I've played the, I played a cop and surprise, all these, something different. So I played a reporter who gets trampled in Sergeant Kabuki Man. And so it was completely something different. It was like a 1-day shoot, which made it manageable for me, and just kept my hand kind of in the Troma universe. A couple of years later, Lloyd called me to come back for a sequel to Class of Nuke Em High, a return to Class of Nuke Em High. And I said, okay, what are you thinking? And we said, well, I think the fans would like it if you play the same character that you played in the original Class of Nuke Em High, Ron Sims. I'm like, I'm in. So we got the hazmat suit back on me.
Yes.
And I'm just sort of like sweeping up. And I just thought it was such a funny, cool thing that, all these years later, which are 35, whatever years later, Ron Sims, he's still working there. He's still on the job all these years later. This is unbelievable. So I thought that was a cool way of sort of rounding it out.
And then you also got to round out being in every Toxic Avenger movie as the police chief in Citizen Toxie.
I did, yeah. And again, I said, yeah, I'll do something, but I want just something quick, get in and out, and police chief, let's do it. And so I did that in the Toxic sequel, and which kept me in all of the the Toxic movies. I guess Dan Snow and I are the only two actors that were in all of them. I wish I could have been in the reboot that they're doing now. That would have been a lot of fun, and I think the fans would have liked it.
I would have loved
Could have
it.
been artfully put in there. And I think that would have been a nice homage and respect for what came before. But director went in his own way.
It's just fun hearing just how the sets were going back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sound like too much has changed, over the years. I mean, you can attest to that, from Toxic Avenger all the way to Return to Nuke Em High, I'm sure is very similar.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I guess, did you notice any big differences? Oh man, they seem to have a lot more volunteers than they used to, or
no, I think it's always been about the same. I think they have a set number of PAs. Too many PAs running around is not the answer either. So I think at this point, Lloyd knows what works for the shoot, and that's the number that he puts in. Sometimes people drop out in the middle and you got to replace them, but the number, I think, tends to be, what it is.
So one thing I thought was kind of cool too is that you were on the Death to the Pee-wee Squad poster, but you're not in that movie.
Correct. Yeah. So that was very cool. That actually was done from a shoot that I did in actually Lloyd's residence, where I came in and they wanted me to play this, just to set up for a shoot, photo shoot, and then to do an artistic kind of like a painting kind of thing out of that, which is what they did. And so they used that, if I remember, I think it was Lloyd's wife that actually did the shoot and put that together. And that I was not in the Death of the Pee-wee Squad, but I'm on the poster.
Yeah. Did you act in any of, I know they would shoot Troma's Edge TV and Tromaville Cafe and little, just kind of special features around the office. Did you ever show up for any of those?
I think I did. I've done a few things where Troma's called me to, I remember doing I think I did an interview on the rooftop of the Troma headquarters when it was over on 9th Avenue. And a few other little things. I remember going over there often, seeing Michael Hers, who's a lawyer, obviously Michael and Lloyd together were the ones who formed Troma. And as a lawyer to lawyer, I always, would chat with Michael about things. And there was a lawyer who was working at the Troma offices at the time that I would come in and chat with as well. I know that they moved from there long ago, but that was really an institution.
Yeah.
People coming in and out of that. Did you ever get to go there?
I have never had the chance to visit the Troma offices, so I live vicariously through all those DVD special features.
Yeah. It was a special place.
Did you keep any props or any relics from any of the movies?
So I did. I think I was supposed to return everything, but I'm not sure that I did. And I had the chest piece and the arm pieces down to the gloves for the devil character, and I probably still have them somewhere. I think time is the enemy of preservation of beauty, and so the latex is all peeling and they're kind of falling apart after all this time, but I still have them. And like you mentioned before, I have the pictures that I sent you, and I probably still have some other photos somewhere. You know, things are so different now with cell phones, and everything is on video, and it's so easy. Back then, you really had to make a conscious choice to take a camera and try to record some stuff that, on a set where everything by definition is being, the important stuff is being recorded. So, but I'm glad that I got the ones that I did.
It's really cool. It's just such a time capsule piece of like Troma behind the scenes that I've never seen before. So that was really cool.
Very cool.
If you could go back and revisit any of your characters from any of the movies, who would you want to go back and play again?
I probably had the most, it was the most physically demanding and unpleasant in the summer, but I probably had the most fun playing the chairman and the devil both. Another funny little memory that just popped up was there's a scene where I'm reciting, there are some people who are poor and homeless, and they come up to me as this rich, fat cat corporate CEO, and they ask me for money. They ask me for money for food, and I give them a line from Shakespeare, neither a borrower nor a lender be, Shakespeare. And the response is supposed to be a takeoff on David Mamet, who is, has the dropping F-bombs in his plays like crazy. And so the response is supposed to be, fuck you, David Mamet, and so that's so we roll camera, and the woman who's supposed to do it was a woman of certain years. She was not a professional actor, and she's given this line. In her defense, she probably didn't have a lot of time to prepare. She probably didn't understand the context of it. And so camera rolls, I do my, neither a borrower nor a lender be, Shakespeare. And she goes, fuck you, David Mamet. And cut, no, okay. And Lloyd's like explaining to her, he's not David Mamet. He's not. So, this is you reciting a line, fuck you, pause, and then David Mamet, and action. And I do my line, and she's like, fuck you, David Mamet. No, that's now cut. No, that's not. No, it's, then it becomes fuck you, David Mamet, and now it's every possible syllable is being, highlighted. It became just disastrous. And we're standing there. And finally, Lloyd's solution was to just stand there, put the camera on her, and he said, look, just say exactly what I say. Talk about giving a line reading. Yeah. And so he now begins just screaming F-bombs and David Mamet at this poor woman, older woman, and she's now parroting. So it was like, fuck you, 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 David Mamet, fuck you, David Mamet. Cut. Perfect. And so he finally got the line out of her, but that's how he got it. So you'll see it in the movie. That's sort of the behind the scenes of how that scene came about.
That's one of my favorite jokes in the movie. So that's pretty awesome.
So,
well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all these stories with me, but I think we should start wrapping it up here. Where can people follow you on the social medias, or do you have a public presence really on the social medias?
So people are welcome to find me. I'm pretty easy to find. So Rick Collins ESQ, the ESQ for lawyer, Rick Collins ESQ, Instagram. I may post those pictures that I sent you on my Instagram, so people could look for that. I have a Twitter account as well, Rick Collins ESQ, so they can find me there as well. I have a public Facebook page at Rick Collins Online, so you can follow that as well. So, and if anybody, wants to sort of see more about what I do for a living, you can go to rickcollins.com. Obviously, that's not so much in the acting or the trauma stuff, but
it is interesting, though. I've read some of your interviews and articles that you've written, so it is very interesting stuff.
Well, thank you, Zack. Thank you.
Well, awesome.
So, this was fun, man. Thank you for having me on and letting me take this long walk down memory lane. It's been a long time since I started my Tromaville journey in, I guess, like 1981, maybe, something like that. So thank you for bringing these memories back.
Thank you for coming on, and everybody out there, you can follow me on Twitter at Lego Larry. You can follow the show on Twitter at Talkin Troma, and as always, stay traumatized.